Straight talk from Ambassador Pete. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. U.S. Ambassador to Canada Pete Hoekstra held back no punches when appearing at a meeting of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Conference. This was in Ottawa, and he was talking about the fact that we should be at the point of having a deal now. But there were a couple of interesting things in his discussion, some that are going to annoy Canadians, but some that we should be prepared for now after months and months of talks, negotiations, and signals, even from the Carney government in Ottawa. First off, he said, enough with the ads. He said that the ad, and look, I have my own views on the ad. I don't think it was the tipping point, or maybe it was the tipping point, but it wasn't the only reason that trade talks were called off. But Ambassador Hoekstra said that you can't run ads in the United States of America attacking the president in the middle of an election cycle, which they were in, and just before a Supreme Court decision that, well, the American government wants to win. Look, I don't think that the ads were going to impact the Supreme Court. I don't think that they were going to impact the elections that happen in places like Virginia and elsewhere. But look, they are offended by them. That's why Prime Minister Carney apologized for them. Are they the reason that, or is the ad the reason that the trade talks were called off? Not according to people like Kevin Hassett, who is the director of the National Economic Council. He said it was one of a number of trade irritants that have been building up over time, and maybe it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Regardless, the ambassador says stop doing ads in the United States attacking the president. Fair point. Okay, we wouldn't like that if that was done to us, but I still am not sure that that was the whole reason trade talks were broken down. Now, let's move on to where trade talks will end up. One of the things that Ambassador Hoekstra said was that we will not get a new trade deal that doesn't include some form of tariffs. This is something that I've been telling you since February of this year. When I went down to Washington with Premier Doug Ford and all the other premiers, they went down for their big push on the idea that, we need a Team Canada approach. Let's go down to Washington. Let's talk to people. Well, I talked to people as well. And I spoke to U.S. senators, members of Congress, who were saying, look, there is a growing consensus that there needs to be a baseline tariff for goods coming into the United States. And guess what? That baseline tariff would be about 10%. If it is just 10%, then most industry experts and associations that I've talked to say, yeah, we don't like it, but we can deal with it. We can deal with a 10% tariff. Our dollar's lower. We have other trading costs. So how would that work? Well, for example, in autos, the Americans might look at the last 5 years of how many cars we've sold them versus how many cars we've bought. And they would say, okay, based on what you've sold us, these cars are going to go in with a 10% tariff. Anything above that would be 25 or 50% tariff. That's what they're looking at. Do we want to accept that? Well, if we don't want to accept that, then the alternative is that Kuzma is going to blow up in a little while. This is not a question of roll over and take it. This is a question of we need to examine, does this work for us? Will this benefit us? The Brits have taken a very similar deal. It's not a great deal for them, but the Americans aren't interested in deals that are great for other countries anymore. They're interested in deals that are great for them. What do we want to do? Our entire economy is based on access to the American market. If we don't have access to that market, how quickly can we pivot? Well, we're talking years, 5, 10, 15 years before we can fully pivot. We already have free trade deals with more than 50 countries. That's before Mark Carney lifted a finger. Most of those were signed by Stephen Harper, who's been out of power for a decade. And Canadian industry and business have not pivoted. They have not decided, you know what, let's start trading with Jordan. Let's start trading with the European Union. Let's start trading with Colombia. We simply don't do it. Most of our exports, more than 75%, go to the United States. How much do we want to fight on this? It's a valid question for us to ask. Finally, one of the things that Ambassador Hoekstra said was the ability of Canada to get a trade deal does depend on whether we actually buy the F-35s we've committed to or not. Now, some, like Andrew Coyne at the Globe and Mail, are saying, well, this is just ransom. Well, wait a minute. We're the ones actually committing ransom. We're saying, hey, we have a contract to buy 88 F-35s, but We don't like what you're doing, so we might just stop at the 16 we're fully committed to and cancel the other 72. That's bad for our military. As I've explained, as I have, documented these 10,000 jobs from SAB, that's utter BS. It's not going to happen. We need to actually go for what is best for our economy and what's best for the military, and that's the F-35. Talked about that with Billy Flynn in a video just the other day. But the anti-American sentiment in this country is so high that we might buy the Swedish-made Saab Gripen jet just to say, screw you, Yankees. That's not a plan for building a military. That's not a plan for equipping our armed forces with a jet that will fly for the next 40 years. By the way, the Saab Gripen jet first flew in 1988. Yeah, sure, there's been upgrades, but it's a 1988 prototype that we are building on. And we're going to fly it for the next 40 years versus going with the F-35, a project that we've been involved in from the beginning, that we have pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into, a project that has brought billions of dollars into our economy. Yeah, we should be buying the F-35, and yet for political reasons, for cheap, stupid political reasons, we are thinking of going in another direction just to own the Americans. How is this any different from, those 20-something conservatives who just want to own the libs? They don't care about whether it's good policy or bad policy. Let's just own the libs. This is about, oh, let's own the Americans. This is not a good idea. Ambassador Hoekstra, whether you like him or not, he's speaking some common sense here. We should be paying attention to what is in our best interests and continuing to fight with the Americans and put auto jobs and steel jobs and aluminum jobs and copper mining jobs and other jobs on the line while we don't have other alternatives on the hook. That's just a bad idea. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment down below, share this on social media, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.